what about a straight up mac and cheese? To really put this to the test, I'm grating 4 ounces of the oldest, oiliest cheddars I can get my hands on, 4 to 6 years old. From there on out, the technique is pretty similar. I'm using thick cut bacon instead of guanciale, macaroni instead of long pasta, and am supplanting.
So he's making an American version of a carbonara. I think that's a nice touch. I think that's a really great interpretation of something classic and making it his own. That's awesome. Chef Brian Tsao here, not your typical chef, and today I'm gonna be reacting to Basics with Babish, Foolproof Carbonara. Before I go on with today's episode, I do wanna give a shout out to my newest sous chef level patrons, Andre Martin, Paul Smith. Guys, thank you so much for your support. You guys, along with all the patrons, really do contribute a lot to this channel. And for those of you who are watching and want to support further, please consider becoming a patron. Be sure to visit the link in the description below. By becoming a patron, you get to take advantage of some awesome perks like early access to new episodes, but most importantly, patron exclusive content. And finally, if you can take a minute to follow me on Instagram at chefbriantsao, that would be greatly appreciated. I love this series. I always loved like the basics, the fundamentals of cooking, at least Western cookery, which is what I'm most
so
familiar
carbonara
with.
from an ingredients perspective alone is just an emulsion of water and different kinds of fat. In this case, Parmesan, egg yolks, and pork fat. Traditionally from guanciale, a cured pork jowl.
I said Parmesan, but if I'm not mistaken, traditionally it's supposed to be Pecorino Romano. I have this feeling he's saying Parmesan because it's much more readily available to people all across the world. Definitely the more popular cheese versus Pecorino Romano. For those of you who don't know already, Pecorino Romano is made with sheep's milk and a Parmesan is made with cow's milk.
To make the ultimate carbonara, I eventually tried out a technique we learned in the cacio e pepe episode of Botched. That is pre-emulsifying the sauce in a blender. We'll get back to that later. For any kind of carbonara, my cookware 1-2 punch is 12 inches each, stainless steel and cast iron. It's important that the pasta cooking pot be shallow and wide so that we can cook the pasta in a minimal amount of water, something I forgot to get. I got about 2-3 inches of water in my 12-inch skillet that I'm going to heavily salt and bring to a boil. Meanwhile, I'm going to start the guanciale off in a cold pan and slowly cook it so that it's fat.
Cold pan, that is key. If you want to, something with a lot of fat like guanciale or bacon or pancetta, they contain a lot of fat. And you don't want to potentially burn this product by putting it onto a hot pan. What you really want to do is start it on a cold pan so it slowly warms everything up, does what's called rendering out the fat. So the fat is solid at room temperature, but once it's warmed up, it becomes a liquid and then it oozes out essentially. Then as it comes up to temp, all the moisture content has evaporated. All you're left with is the protein product and the fat. And the fat then sears that guanciale. So it really takes out all the fat from the entire product and then it's using its own fat to sear it off and give it that wonderful color. Finally have my carbonara video coming out very soon. And I purposely used a smaller pot because I wanted to emulate what most of you out there will have at home. Not everyone will necessarily have a 12-inch wide pot, but I 1000% agree with this technique. Even though a wider mouth pot will evaporate moisture quicker, that's enough water content where you don't have to really be too concerned with that. And by using the wider pot, he can fully submerge the pasta all at the same time. So I think that's a nice attention to detail.
So I am preemptively stealing 1.5 cups of precious pasta cooking water, straining the pasta, tossing with a little bit of oil to make sure it doesn't stick, covering and keeping warm while we finish cooking our bacon. Now over in the blender, we've got our
bacon.
3 egg yolks.
Oh, it's not guanciale, it's bacon. I mean, again, this is Basics with Babish. I think he's really just looking to show you a version with ingredients that are much more that are easily accessible. And I like the technique he's using so far. So for my video, I took the Pecorino Romano, 1 whole egg and 1 yolk per portion, and I whisked it in a bowl. He's getting a very super smooth emulsion, which is an emulsion is basically the combination of 2 or more ingredients to become one. He's gonna get a super smooth emulsion by using a blender. He has his egg yolk and cheese, and he's going to slowly pour in that pasta water. Maybe he mentioned it. I didn't hear it, but it appears that water has now since cooled down or is at room temperature, because if you put the hot water directly into the egg in a big mass or too quickly, you could potentially prematurely scramble your eggs.
4 ounces of finely grated Parmesan cheese.
He's putting
While
in
that
slow.
cup of pasta cooking water is still hot, we're going to slowly stream it into the
It's still
blender
hot.
while-
Okay, but you can see how slowly he's incorporating that hot water into there. So he's doing everything great.
Turn off the blender, finish cooking the guanciale, and then once it's done, we're going to stream about a quarter.
Okay, it is guanciale. It is guanciale. I heard bacon earlier. I stand corrected. It is guanciale.
Fat into the running blender. Now here you're going to see a fascinating moment
nice,
where I
nice
accidentally
touch, putting
dropped
the
a chunk
fat
of
into the
guanciale into the blender. Then I'm like, oh, I got to start over. Then I'm like, wait a minute. What if I just liquefy the bacon?
I like that.
I got to turn on
I love the
blender. Hang on a second.
candidness
I
of
know
this.
liquid bacon might not sound super appetizing, but if you've got a powerful enough blender, it emulsifies it seamlessly into the sauce, making it ever thicker and creamier. Back in the pan, we're leaving a quarter cup of fat remaining as we add our cooked pasta, along with
Nice.
our remaining reserved cup of pasta cooking water.
Okay.
Now this recipe calls for a half pound of pasta. I think I overdid it a little bit, so I'm taking some out, but the rest I'm cooking together for about 1 minute over low heat, then killing the heat entirely and keeping the pasta moving while I slowly stream in our blender
Nice.
bacon emulsion thing, which starts to thicken as it hits the residual
Nice.
heat of the
It's already hot. The pasta's hot. The pan is hot. He's adding in the egg mixture in little bits. I think it's a bit too aggressive of a heat personally. It looks beautiful though, as is at the moment, but I could be, let's see what the end product is.
much like normal
Looks
carbonara,
great.
but
Nice and
super
creamy.
and 100% foolproof and adjustable. So not only does this technique yield far and away the best
Nice.
carbonara I've ever had in my life, one that's easier to prepare and harder to screw up, but it also affords us the opportunity to treat carbonara as a sort of base sauce from which endless possibilities and combinations
Cool.
become possible. In fact, I submit that with the right combinations of fats and water,
The way he did it is kind of almost like the opposite of the way that I did it in my video. You're just gonna have to wait and see it. Again, I was kind of doing my best to emulate not my best, but I was emulating how I would do it if I was just cooking for my family. And I really like this technique. I like that he did it in the blender and he poured it from the blender into the noodle, whereas I had my egg mixture in a bowl, whisked, and then I put the noodle into there. I like this technique a lot too.
you could carbonara damn near anything. Let's start easy and make a vegan version of our carbonara.
Vegan
Standing
version.
for our bacon, as is so often the case, is mushrooms. In this case, hen of the woods or maitake mushrooms trimmed of their bases, cut into bite-sized pieces and then
Love
sautéed.
hen of the
But
woods.
since they contain no
That
fat,
doesn't
we need
quite.
to break
That looks more like oyster mushrooms to me personally, but
own
yeah.
from home. So I've got about a half cup of light olive oil here. That's high smoke point olive oil. I'm adding the mushrooms and sautéing until deeply brown, like 15 minutes. Once things are just starting to turn
Look at how
brown,
much
now
that
is a
shrunk.
good time to add your pasta to your pre-boiling pot of water.
Yep,
This time
always
I'm gonna make sure that
pre-boiling
I'm
pot of
using
water.
Exactly half a pound, so we don't have any more embarrassing pasta pull-out situations. And then by the time the pasta's done, you should have some nice, deeply brown mushrooms. Meanwhile, over in the blender, we are combining 1 tablespoon of red miso paste, about a quarter, make it a half cup of nutritional yeast, and about a quarter cup of the vegan egg replacement of your choosing. Then once the mushrooms are done cooking, it's the same procedure as before, slowly streaming in about a quarter cup of the cooking fat into the running blender and then setting aside. Back on the stovetop, I'm finishing the mushrooms with about a half teaspoon of smoked paprika, toasting that around for about 30 seconds over medium-low heat before adding the pasta. Ideally straight out of the water, just like this, so you have all the pasta cooking water you could ask for. Again, about a half cup of which we're adding back to the pasta, cooking together for about 1 minute over very low heat, and then back over at the blender, we're streaming about 1 cup of our pasta cooking water into the blender as it runs. Then killing the heat entirely under the pan as we keep the pasta moving and pour in our vegan carbonara emulsion sauce. Seasoned to taste with kosher salt and freshly ground black pepper. Try to lift and toss the pasta rather than just mix it, aerating the sauce and
I mean,
maximizing
that looks
creaminess.
beautiful.
And there you
I'm
have
not.
it,
I've mentioned this before in past videos of certain reactions. I think like a Gordon Ramsay one or something, where I talk about like oftentimes when you're a chef in the public sphere presenting recipes, you always need to put your own personal spin on things, right? So that's why, in my belief, why so many times we see dishes so bastardized, because it's the chef's version, and that's the beauty of food. It is just as much an art as it is a craft. There's a lot of room for interpretation. However, you also have to be ready to face the scorn of purists and traditionalists, and it's really up to you as an individual how you decide to take that, but also how you want to take your craft, right? I guarantee you any purist is going to say, that's not carbonara. What is that trash? That's garbage. And I agree, that's not carbonara in the traditional authentic sense, but I guarantee you any vegan or vegetarian would be happy to eat that. I'm pretty sure if he presented that plate to me and didn't present it as a vegan carbonara, as just like a creamy pasta, I would eat the shit out of that too. I may notice that it's a vegan product after a few bites, but there's no denying that clearly looks delicious, but it's not carbonara.
Vegan carbonara that is every bite as good as a real carbonara. No bullshit. It obviously doesn't taste exactly the same, but has the same amazing creaminess and texture.
It's gonna be
rich,
delicious.
Savory
nice
flavor
watch.
all its own. And both this and the meat-based carbonara sauces are remarkably stable. They don't break, they're not oily, and even after sitting out for 30 minutes, a little bit of warm water brings what would normally be a concrete block right back to life. So now, the real question, what else can we carbonara? What about a straight-up mac and cheese? To really put this to the test, I'm grading 4 ounces of the oldest, oiliest cheddars I can get my hands on, 4 to 6 years old. From there on out, the technique is pretty similar. I'm using thick-cut bacon instead of guanciale, macaroni instead of long pasta, and am supplanting the sauce.
All right, so he's making an American version of a carbonara. I think that's a nice touch. I think that's a really great interpretation of something classic and making it his own. That's awesome. I'd be very curious to try it personally.
Fresh garlic, a teaspoon of Dijon mustard, and a few dashes of hot sauce.
Okay, jazz it up, mustard, hot sauce, and stuff like that. He's going for that mac and cheese vibe. I love it. I mean, there's clearly nothing bad in there, you know.
Attempting a double batch with a pound of pasta.
I did it with
and
macaroni.
It was only at this point that I realized that I'd only made a normal batch size of sauce, so I only had half the sauce that I needed. Nevertheless, the sauce still looked really creamy, even if there wasn't enough of it. To save the batch, I decided to let things cool off a little bit and add another 6 ounces of grated cheese and some pickled jalapenos, because why not? Folding together so the unmelted cheese was evenly distributed, returning it to the pan and pivoting, as we so often do in life.
Pivot. Hey, I love that word. I talk about this with my cooks, my chefs that work for me, and I tell them, like, I've explained to them that one of the biggest parts of my job as an owner and a chef of my own place, Mission Sandwich Social, is the ability, like, my superpower is the ability to pivot. The cost of this item has gone up, so let's find another substitute that doesn't sacrifice on quality. Maybe it requires more butchering or trimming or different type of, different technique to fabricate, but will the end product be close enough and or the same or better? And that is, while what he's making, this third dish he's making, he wanted to make a mac and cheese style carbonara. I get the principle. It's not a carbonara, but as he was making it, it wasn't working out, so he pivoted. While it's not a carbonara, I greatly respect that. I greatly respect that he is willing to put himself out there, do something quote unquote wrong with the dish, period, right? Deviating from the classic dish, trying to execute something on camera for everyone to see rather than refilm it and make it look perfect. He's like, you know what? I'm gonna keep this and I'm gonna pivot. I respect that above all. And that is why I will put out reactions where, like, it makes me look dumb, makes me look like I don't know what I'm talking about. And you know what? I have no problem admitting when I don't know what I'm talking about. I will say, I think this is what it is. This is my educated guess. I don't watch these videos beforehand, so I can't really do the research. And it's funny because every time that happens and I misquote something or I misspeak, I always do my research afterwards. Like, okay, now I know, now I get it. Or you guys will tell me in the comments. I keep saying this, don't be afraid to fail. Just don't. You learn so much from it.
Mixing together 2 cups of panko breadcrumbs with about a half stick of melted butter and about 2 ounces each grated Parmesan, cheddar,
he's making
and
mac
white
and
cheddar
cheese. I mean,
because as
he
Thomas
pivoted
Jefferson
and he's
used to
just
say,
making straight up mac and cheese.
I love it.
He pivoted. He was trying to make a carbonara style mac and cheese dish, and now he's just going straight up mac and cheese with some egg yolk in it to make the mac and cheese a little, creamier. If he's gonna do what I think he's gonna do, put this breadcrumb cheesy mixture on top and bake it, that egg is gonna curdle and solidify, and it's not gonna help. It's not gonna do anything to make it any creamier. It will give it an eggy texture, obviously, but like I said, at this point, he's just making mac and cheese.
I'm a cheesy boy. Top up our cast
Which
iron
there's
pan
nothing
with
wrong
mac
with
and
that.
cheese with our cheesy breadcrumb mixture. Press it down flat, maybe show off its
Hell
fineness
yeah.
to your nearest Kendall.
Dude, that's
and pop
gonna
it into a
rock.
400-degree Fahrenheit oven for about 20-25 minutes until deeply golden brown and crisped on top. Scoop it out, and behold, in spite of only having
The
half.
crust looks great. You see how much curdled egg there is in there. Again, he pivoted. That's not gonna suck. That's for damn sure. I know it's gonna be delicious, but it's not gonna be that creamy mac and cheese that you desire. And if you were to present this to if you were to write this on the menu, you know, mac and cheese carbonara or something, and you present this plate to the customer, they're just gonna say like, oh, you made me mac and cheese. They're gonna eat it and they're gonna be like, oh, you know, this is kind of like mac and cheese. It has all that curdled egg. It's missing that creaminess that you know that I desire from a mac and cheese. Not saying it's gonna be bad, just again giving you my point of view from a professional working chef standpoint.
Cheese sauce necessary and swimming in ultra old cheddar, being heated and baked and patted with other cheese, our sauce has not broken.
Okay, he said that his sauce has not broken, so it's probably the video. I can't see it clearly or close up enough. It doesn't appear to be creamy to me. He's saying it is.
But I hope this method helps you to think differently about cheese sauces.
I thought it was that first carbonara that he made, the more authentic one, or the authentic one rather. Great execution. I know for a fact it's going to taste absolutely delicious. The vegan one, great execution of a vegan style carbonara. It's not true carbonara. I don't think Andrew is claiming it to be. He's just making a version that vegans and vegetarians can consume. And then that last one was just straight up mac and cheese. Very cool. I like this video. Completely different set of techniques that still came out to an excellent end product from what I can observe. Great job. I absolutely love this channel. And this was my first time watching this video, and very cool. And let me know if you guys want to see more binging with Babish or basic with Babish videos, if you want me to react to that. Let me know in the comments. And with that said, I'm Chef Brian Tsao, not your typical chef, and I'll see you really soon.